Right. Welcome, Oklahoma counselors. My voice went out there. I'm so happy that you're here with us today. We do have some people continuing to log in, and I'm really excited about this training, this Bullying in 2016. I'm going to go ahead and give you right now, I'm not sure why the font did that again, but I'm going to go ahead and give you right now the sign-in. I know some of you are doubled or tripled up at a computer, which is awesome. Anyone can take this URL, type it in, and fill out the form. You can do it on your phone or your computer or on a iPad or anything like that. If you want to go ahead and do that right now, I'd appreciate it. This is the way I send an email for you to get your points, and this is how I also send your professional development certificate. It is also how I send my course evaluation. So please go ahead and sign in. And we had a request, which I was going to do anyway, to tell you about the crisis team dates. We know that we had 5 dates, and as you probably know by now, the Oklahoma City and Tulsa area dates filled up totally. We had 125 spots in Oklahoma City and 200 in Tulsa, and that was just based on how many people they could fit in a room. I am excited to tell you that we're adding 2 more dates. We'll be adding an Oklahoma City date. That date has not been scheduled or firmed up yet. And we are adding a Tulsa date, and that in Owasso at the same location. And I believe that date is February 22nd. It's a Tuesday. Maybe it's 21st. February 21st is a Tuesday. And I will be sending out, as soon as we get that Oklahoma City nailed down, we'll be sending out another email for you, so you can see that and let us know that you want to sign up for it. Now, some of you are like, well, can I change dates? I don't mind if you change dates, that's fine, but please, if you do that, please cancel your registration for the first session you scheduled so it can open it up for somebody else. And we also really want teams to go together. So if part of your team did not get a ticket, your choices are to either wait and see if they can get a ticket on the first date if seats open up, or to cancel everybody's registration from the first date and go to the second date. So that's what we're looking at. And I'm sorry for those of you who don't have sound. What I'm going to do right now is type in the login so you'll have it so we can move on. So you can do this while I'm talking. I also wanted to tell you that I do have the handouts already for you online. I don't know if it's gone live yet. Our webmaster has to update those before I can actually, I've added them, so we'll see if they come in too. And I see lots of people with no sound.
It's working.
It's working? Okay.
If your PowerPoint, though, keeps changing colors, I'm going to have you do it a different way. So.
Okay.
Looks like you're signing in as black. Was that white before?
Yeah.
Let's go a different route.
Okay. I'm going to step out of the way and let Gary help me for a second. Where do you go to register for the crisis team training? You're going to go to the sde.ok.gov/SDE and type in counseling. Counseling, under that counseling page, you're going to actually find our new page that it's training, and there you can log in there on those training pages. I've also sent emails to our listserv. You can log in that way. Yay, it's better. Okay. And that's fine. Okay, that's fine. You can sign in that way, and it will get you into those trainings. So you get an error message when you type in the URL. How do you get PD points? You sign in on the URL that I just gave you. I really believe this is the right URL, and it didn't work. Okay, so what I'll do is if it doesn't work for some reason, Gary will get our list in the next couple of days, so early next week I'll send them to you. If you don't get to sign in on this, I will send them to you from our big list. Your sound gave you an error of no microphone, but you clicked and you can hear me. Okay, the URL is working for some people. So, okay, So here we go. We're going to get started. Do I use arrows to share?
You can use, no, you can use your, anything.
Just the space bar or whatever?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to look today at current trends, definitions, and interventions in today's world. Unfortunately, I can't show you videos, but I am going to link these videos on our website, so you have access to them on our website. This is basically the trailer for Bully, and the reason I wanted to show it to you is because I noticed that a lot of the adults in this video meant well, but what they didn't realize is they were actually hurting by some of the things they were saying or doing, including an administrator talking to a group of alleged bullies at one time instead of individually, calling alleged bullies good as gold when they've been tormenting someone. So that's kind of why I showed you that. But I will link this trailer on our website so you'll be able to watch it later. This is my contact information. You should have this, but if for some reason you don't, here it is. I will also have it for you at the end of our presentation. So let's get started. So 22% of students report being bullied during the school year. And I'm going to tell you that I think that number is low because I think most people don't report when they're bullied for various reasons, which I'm sure that you find to be true in your schools as well. This one says 64% of children who were bullied did not report it. I think that even sounded kind of low. I think that there's probably more, and I think if you really talk to most people, they would say that they've been a victim of bullying at some point in their life, depending on how you define bullying. So 57% of bullying situations stop when a peer intervenes on behalf of the student being bullied. I think this is our most important statistic, and I think that this is why we have to teach our kids how to intervene in a bullying situation. I think this number is one that we'll come back to in our presentation, but this is a really, really important statistic. This one concerns me as well. 82% of students who identify as LGBTQ were bullied last year based on their sexual orientation, and that is just not acceptable. So I know that our LGBTQ students are at serious risk for being bullied, and that is something that we need to be keenly aware of. Bullying is one of the two main causes for students to drop out of school in Oklahoma. You'll get a chance to log in again at the end if you missed it. So 1 of 4 adults will intervene in a bullying situation. Every 7 minutes is how often a child is bullied in the United States. I'm not sure why it's showing up that way. So sorry about that, friends. 160,000 children miss school every day out of fear of being bullied. And we all know that if children are not in school, they're not learning. And that is a really important statistic. 200% of students are twice as likely as non-bullied peers to experience negative health, such as headaches and stomach aches. 200% more likely. This one is the one that gets me. Students are 330% times more likely to report a suicide attempt than youth who report not being bullied. 330% more. So where does bullying happen? We know that it's happening sometimes in the classroom. We know that it's happening in our hallways, in our gyms, in the bathrooms, at the cafeteria, on the playground, on the school bus, at homes, and it doesn't really matter what socioeconomic category you're in. It can happen at the big houses or the small houses. It's happening walking home from school or riding your bike. But where it's really happening in 2016 is through electronics, and that's what we're going to really focus on. It's happening on computers, smartphones. It's happening really everywhere. So let's talk about the components of bullying, which you guys know, but I wanted to give you a pretty firm definition of this because I know it can be kind of a gray area. It's an imbalance of power. So kids who are bullies are going to use their power to try to gain control, strength over somebody else, and they can do it in a number of different ways. Bullying is repetitive. It either has to happen more than once or have the potential of happening more than once, I know that in a lot of school policies, and you just have to look at your policy to see how it's stated, and a lot it does say it doesn't have to happen more than once if it's an egregious offense. So an example of that I would give you was one time as a counselor, a group of girls wanted to give a makeover to a special needs student, and they made her up to look like a clown. And it was one of the most horrible experiences of my counseling life. I got really angry, and I don't really get angry at kids, but I got pretty angry that time. And so that one was an obvious bullying incident, even though nothing like that had happened to her before. So that's an example of an egregious event. It has to be intentional harm. So they did something to be mean or to harm them or to socially exclude them. It has to be on purpose with intention. So there's several different types of bullying. Physical bullying, obviously. We're talking about hitting, kicking, punching, pinching, spitting. Even making a rude hand gesture could be considered physical bullying. Social bullying, sometimes referred to as relational bullying. It involves hurting someone's reputation or their relationships. And that's a pretty interesting perspective to take. So this is when you leave someone out on purpose, you tell other kids not to be friends with this kid, or you spread rumors, or you embarrass someone in public. And this can be a slippery slope, and I know you guys are going, wait a second. Kids don't have to be friends with each other. They don't have to invite them to their birthday party if they don't want to, and you are correct about that. They do not. Here's an example of social exclusion, what I mean by leaving someone out on purpose. So there was a group of middle school girls who had a birthday party one night, and they intentionally didn't invite 2 girls to the party that were in their group, which, okay, that's fine. That's not really bullying until the group at the party FaceTime the other 2 girls and start saying, you're not invited, you're not here, we're having so much fun without you, and we're talking about you. That's when it starts to be social exclusion and a bullying issue. Cyberbullying, obviously, it's taking place on electronic technology, and it is rampant. It can happen anywhere at any time, not even during the school day, but it still affects school. All kinds of technological devices, tablets, email over the computer, website, social media really is the worst. It could be anything from a mean text or email, or sharing a photo, even if it's not a direct photo, even if you're passing it on, making a fake website, making a fake profile, that's called catfishing. It could be any of those things. And you know, cyberbullying is different. Kids who are cyberbullied are really often bullied in person as well. Additionally, kids who are cyberbullied have a harder time getting away from that behavior. They can't turn it off. It's really difficult. It can happen 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anywhere, day or night. And you don't know the person behind the device. I went to a conference recently through the Megan Meyer Foundation, and her daughter was bullied over social media, and it was a boy who was saying horrible things about her, but it actually turned out to be a parent who had created a fake account with the intention of bullying this girl. It can be anybody. We don't know who's necessarily behind it. They can also be posted anonymously, especially on a lot of our apps that we're going to talk about in a second. It can be really difficult or sometimes even impossible to trace the source. Even when you have the police involved, it can be difficult. It's also hard when somebody knows you're coming and they delete the picture or the post. It's something that they can slip out of. So let's talk about apps. Facebook is my favorite. You guys should friend me on Facebook if you haven't done that yet. You should also check out our Prevention OK Facebook page where we post and update what we're doing here. But it's really has become more for people like me who are old ladies or middle-aged ladies and gentlemen. We have Twitter, which is a pretty fun one. We have Instagram. A lot of kids have Instagram, and I'm not sure if you know this, but Instagram has a private message function where you can privately message. I know my son got in trouble using the private message function. They have Vine, which are videos. You have Kik Messenger, which is a whole different messaging app. you have Tumblr, you have Yik Yak, and if you don't know what those are, I'm not going to spend a lot of time telling you, but you should check into those because your kids know them. Tinder, Ask FM, this one's really troubling because people can post anything they want, ask anything they want, and people can post back anonymously. It's a scary one. Whisper, the same thing. They post anonymously something, and it can be really scary stuff. If they're suicidal, if they're being assaulted, it can be really scary things. And Snapchat, it's the bane of my existence. This is the one where students can send video or pictures or text, and the message disappears after a very short period of time. So it's a really dangerous one. I know that my older son, I've let him have Snapchat, but I have not let my younger son, and this is a conversation we have almost daily about why he's not old enough to have Snapchat. But, you know, you put really apps that require maturity into hands of kids who are just not mature yet, and you get disaster, and that's why. You're asking me what address do we send for our CEUs. If you will log in to that tiny URL that's posted even in your feed of your chat feed earlier, you can log in there and I'll email them to you. So what does the law say? In Oklahoma, there's a School Safety and Bullying Prevention Act. It was passed in 2002. Its purpose is to provide schools with a really good comprehensive approach to bullying, prevention, intervention, and reporting. You know, each district and institution has adopted their own policy that follows the law. You also should know that schools have their own disciplinary standards, and each school and each district should have a Safe Schools Committee, which we'll talk about. And I just got a message, we have issues at our school with an app called After School also. That is a new one that I am just starting to hear about. And so I'm going to check into that, and I'm going to update my presentation. Thanks for mentioning it. Shelly Ellis is here with me, and she's writing it down. Our Facebook page is called Prevention OK, so look for us there. So you all have different policies in your district. You all have a different bullying policy. So I can't share with you your specific policy, but I can kind of talk briefly about a model bullying policy. I encourage you today to print off your policy in your district, highlight it, be very familiar with it so you can tell kids the accurate information about your district. But I'm going to hit some highlights with you. Basically, a good policy is going to say bullying is prohibited of anyone at the school, and this includes teachers or staff members. It extends to all schools in the district, and it talks about prohibited conduct. Interestingly, at school means on school grounds, in school vehicles, at school-sponsored events, or school-sanctioned events. But I'm also going to tell you that many, many, many policies also include or when you're not at school, but the actions of the bullying affect the school setting or have a negative impact on the school setting. And that is true with most bullying policies. I would say a lot of districts have gone to that. I think we can all attest to if there is a cyberbullying issue or a bullying issue outside of school, it comes to school with the kids who are involved every day. So there's a good definition of bullying right here. It lists all different kinds of bullying. It lists electronic communication, and I think it's interesting to point out it says communication directed toward a student or group of students that result in or is reasonably perceived as being done with the intent to cause negative educational or physical results for the targeted individual. And it's done in such a way to interfere with the school's educational mission or education with any student. So if they're having to spend time in your office because they're being bullied, that is interfering with the educational mission because they're not in their classroom. These give good definitions of electronic communication and threatening behavior. And I want to encourage you to read the handouts on this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time reading these to you. Each district should have a bullying prevention officer. At school sites, that's probably your principal. There's probably, at larger schools, there's probably a district administrator as well who is kind of oversees bullying prevention. And they're the person who handle the complaints, handle the reports, etc. Their duties are to make sure they're receiving and promptly reviewing and tracking reports of incidents of bullying, to make sure things are confidential, to receive anonymous reports and establish a method to do so, and to publicize. What do you do? Is there a bullying tip line? I know that like Sand Springs has a great bullying tip line, and it is anybody can call, and it's actually shown a real decrease in bullying, so that's great. Will I be able to copy your PowerPoint sheets? Hard to keep up with the notes. I know it's hard to keep up. Yes, they're going to be online and you'll be able to print them out. So this part is going to go faster because I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the policy. So training, also schools and administrators are required to have training. If you have not had training yet this year, you might ask your principal about that and how maybe you could help with that. And also there should be a safe school committee each site. There's not a requirement on how often that safe school committee meets anymore. There used to be a requirement, but there no longer is. You should be on the safe school committee as a counselor. Absolutely. If you are not on your safe school committee, I would really advocate for that. Ask your principal if you can be on that committee. There should be parents on that committee. There should be students on that committee, administrators, and I really believe that you as a counselor should be on that committee. It's by law. You have to have a safe school committee, and I really hope that you can get into that. Every school should have a bullying prevention program. I don't know if you all have a great curriculum that you're using. I'd love to hear back from you if you have a great curriculum on bullying prevention that you really like. I know that there's some programs like Second Step who incorporate bullying prevention, but it's more than bullying prevention. So if you do have a great bullying prevention program, please let me know by email. Let me know what that curriculum is because I'd like to get a copy and have it available for everybody else to check out. I had somebody say they really like Too Good for Violence as a bullying curriculum, so that's a good one, not one I've had heard of before. There should be a method of reporting in your district that everybody knows. All the students should know how to make a report for bullying. And most districts should have a district bullying report form. And if you don't have one specific for bullying, you might consider doing that or encouraging your administrators to make a specific form for bullying prevention. So I think this is really important that reports should be confidential. And it goes along with FERPA, of course, that we can't tell another student or their family who the person was. But it is important that students are reassured that it's confidential, and good administrators are going to say, if you report, like let's say Shelly was bullying me and I went to talk to my counselor about it, and the counselor might say back to me, well, you know what, this has happened where other people could see, and so even a teacher could have noticed something, and so we don't have to say that you reported it. What we can say is we were notified. And you could even say notified by an adult or notified anonymously, however you want to protect that student's confidentiality. There should be the ability to anonymously report, and all bullying reports should be tracked. Investigation and discipline, I am not going to spend a lot of time on this because luckily you all should never be doing the discipline ever as a counselor. If you are, then email me, let's talk about it. Investigations, I know I could get pulled in to help sometimes with an investigation, which is okay, but it shouldn't be a typical regular practice. So if that is happening to you, please email me or call me and let's have a conversation about that. Consequences are different in each school site. It's basically what this says is it's whatever is appropriate for the circumstance. And here's some examples of consequences that may be given, but that's not limited to this. Some of these include being referred to a counselor or to counseling outside of the school district. And so that is something that you might need to anticipate. And that has happened to me before. I know that I did some racial sensitivity training with some kids because they were using words that they just didn't know what the meaning was, and once they did, they could see how it was bullying. So it could also be a law enforcement referral. And a lot of calls that I get about bullying are calls that I say, you know, you really should contact the police. If you're afraid for your safety, you should contact law enforcement. And that is always within the right of a family. You can always say that to them. You can't tell them they have to, but you can tell them it's within their rights to call law enforcement. You also can remediate, and that could be strategies for protecting all the people involved, so even family members, and it should be appropriate to the situation of bullying that it is. So here's some examples of remediation: support groups, academic interventions, programs that are age appropriate, parental education programs. I had somebody ask me just today, or yesterday, I guess, for a parent program for bullying, peer support groups, modification of the schedule, and when possible, you don't change the victim schedule if you have proof of bullying. You change the bullier's schedule when possible. You let maybe modification of hallway traffic at the school site. In other words, you let the kid who's been a victim leave class 2 minutes early, or leave after the bell is rang for the next class to go 2 minutes late, so they're not in the hallway at the same time. Increased monitoring. So that's the like 2-second version of a good bullying policy, and you will have this on your handouts, which will be online. So don't panic if you didn't read all that. I know I went through it fast. I meant to, because I want to get to this part, because this is the part that really applies to you. So really what we're going to talk about is prevention, intervention, and reporting. What does that look like? So there's a prevention framework that is evidence-based, and it is a best practice. And that is, there's the identification of a situation, there's prevention of a situation, response, and reporting. So that's kind of where we start with the framework. So this is really an interesting circle of bullying. This is really an interesting thing to think about because it includes everyone in your school. They're identified as one of these people. So obviously we have the kids who bully, and if you really think about it, you probably know who these kids are, the chief offenders. However, what I will also tell you is everyone can be in a position where they bully someone at some point. I can remember will share with you that I was a kid who was a target of bullies, especially in elementary school. And I think about a lot of pain that it caused me. It's part of the reason why I got into the counseling profession is because I feel passionate about it, about preventing bullying and not letting other kids grow up and kind of the way I did. But I will also tell you, there was a girl in my class who was kind of even lower on the social food chain than me, and I can remember excluding her from things. And that made me just as bad as the people who were bullying me. I mean, it was definitely a form of bullying. I have a lot of regret about that, but my point to tell you that is even people who are bullied can be the bully. So it's really good to think that it could be anybody at your school, not just your chief offender. So then we have kids who are bullied, and again, we saw that statistic earlier that 22% of kids report bullying, and 64% don't ever report it. But I think that number's higher. I told you earlier, I think everyone has probably been bullied in some way in their life. Depends on how they handle it or cope with it, on whether or not they would even consider it bullying. We have kids who assist, kids who reinforce outsiders and defenders, and let's take a look at what those are. So kids who are bullied are often targets. There are some factors that put them more at risk for being bullied, but not all children with these characteristics will be bullied. And I know that you can think of maybe a student in your school right now who has some of the characteristics we're talking about. Maybe they're socially awkward. Maybe they say things inappropriately at times. Maybe they don't wear the latest clothes. Maybe they're the teacher's pet. There's all kinds of different things that can kind of make a kid be a target of bullies. And the characteristics don't have to be those things, but often those kids are targets. And those are kids that you need help, They need your help, and they need to learn how to cope with troubling things that people would say, but they also need to learn from you things like social skills. So an example of this would be we actually got to rotate with our kids when we were I was a middle school counselor, and so every time I had a group of 6th graders, I would take the boys, I would look at the boys the first 9 weeks, and I would identify the ones who were kind of socially awkward, who didn't really fit in, who didn't really have friends with each other. And what I did was I made a small group of those boys, and I did it for 2 reasons. I did one to teach them social skills, which we worked on a different social skill every week, and they didn't even know it because they were having fun. But the other main reason that I made that group is so they could meet each other and have a friend group of people who understood them, people who would accept them. I think that was really important. So that's what I mean by helping children learn how to respond. You can also address, how do you respond to a bully in that group? We have the kids who assist. These are the children who may not start the bullying or lead in it, but they're right next to them. And the example I think about is in the movie A Christmas Story, and we've got the big bully and then his little crony, this little pipsqueak kid. And the big bully, the redhead, is the one who gets in the fights and does the things, and his little sidekick is the guy who's like, yeah, go get him, who kind of jumps in after the fact. He would be an assistant by this terminology. They probably encourage the bullying behavior and sometimes join in. Then we have kids who reinforce. Maybe they're not directly involved in the bullying, but they are an audience. They might just be standing quietly by and watching what's going on. They're maybe laughing or maybe even providing silent support, but it's encouraging to the bully because they know they have an audience. We have the outsiders. These children are maybe separate from the group. Maybe they don't even really know what's going on, but they're not doing a darn thing to step in and help the situation. So they're not really reinforcing the behavior, but they're not defending it either. They may watch, but they're not really involved, but it's still an audience for the bully. A lot of times these are the kids who want to help but don't know how, and this is why it's so important that we're teaching our kids how to intervene in a bullying situation and empowering them to do so. We have the defenders, and we love these kids. These are the kids who are going to grow up and be counselors just like us. We love them because they're the brave ones who step in and either comfort the child or stand up to the bully. And I can tell you that we as educators are needing to teach kids the right way to stand up to a bully. And we need to embrace the kids and encourage and help and empower the kids who are the brave ones who do stand up to when this occurs. Just want to remind you that 57% of bullying situations stop when a peer intervenes. You know, a statistic earlier was 1 in 4 adults intervene. That's not very many. It's only 25%. But bullying really stops when 57% happens. So that's just like somebody going, if a kid's given a hard time or getting teased, other kid going, hey man, that's not cool, you need to leave him alone. Or I kind of like what she's wearing today. It's just kind of even stepping in doing something. And we know that when you stand up to a bully, it takes away their power. It may take a time or two, but it's really an effective way to stop bullying. So there are 3 models of prevention. There's the school-wide prevention, classroom prevention, and individual prevention. School-wide prevention is a topic for another day that we will talk about. Classroom prevention is also one we're not going to spend much time on, but we're really going to talk about you and how you can individually prevent bullying at your school. And I don't know why it's not fitting in there right now, the font is. So sorry about that, guys. So how do you respond? When you have a student who comes to you and say, Mrs. Sutherland, I've been bullied, or he won't leave me alone, or she's being mean to me, what do you do? Because sometimes I know it's like, oh, you want to think, oh my goodness, I'm so tired of this situation, that you have to respond appropriately. So we're going to look at 6 ways that you do respond. You create a safe space, you listen, you understand, which are 2 different things, you empathize, validate, and you tell someone. So let's talk about creating a safe space. Your offices should be a safe space for students. And indeed, there should be also in the classroom, something you can share with your teachers, is that they should have a safe space in their classroom as well. So So we want to encourage idea sharing, even if it's a different opinion than your own. I have a question. Suggested programs to teach each circle of bully. Second step is a good one, but I can also share my presentation with you and you can teach it that way as well. Please use sarcasm sparingly. I know high school students can sometimes get sarcasm, but middle school students cannot, and definitely elementary students cannot. They do not understand sarcasm, and so when you're sarcastic, it opens the door for everyone else to be sarcastic, and hurt feelings can happen. Let students know that you have no tolerance for bullying. Put a sign on your door. This is a bully-free zone. You know, address classroom issues. Like if you have a classroom where this is happening all the time, go in and help that teacher address that issue. So it's not just the teacher kind of off on their own trying to figure it out, but you maybe go in and observe. You go in and try to help them with their issue. Set an example of kindness and set boundaries. And really that example of kindness is the most important thing that you can do as creating a safe space. If you're having a beef with somebody else in your building right now, and students are pretty smart, they can kind of pick up on those things. Kill them with kindness, as my mom would say. Practice kindness. Do something. I encourage you to do something today that's outside of your comfort zone for that person that you have trouble getting along with, to set that example for kindness, even if only you know what's going on. So listen, engage in active listening, and this is something you're probably already good at as a counselor, but keeping eye contact with a student when they're telling you something, nodding your head, making sounds like oh. Repeat back to the student what you heard. And I know that's difficult because sometimes kids are all over the place, right? They tell you a little bit from last night, then a little bit from last week, and then something from this morning, and it's not in order and it's confusing. So it's really helpful when you repeat back to them what you heard. Don't get angry. I know I told you that story earlier about the girl who got the clown makeover from the mean group of girls, and man, I was super angry, and it was okay for me to be angry, but I could not be angry in front of the girl who was the victim. That was not the time or place to be angry. The time and place to be angry was when with the other adults in the building who were angry with me. To not show that anger in front of the child so you're not making them feel like it's worse than it is, or that, that you don't care about them because you're so angry. And eliminate any distractions that you have. Shut your door. It would drive me crazy. I had an office at one of my buildings with a window in the door, and I would be in the middle of a counseling session with a kiddo, and I'd always keep my eyes on the door with the students back to the door so they couldn't see what was going on, because inevitably I would have some other student come up and dance in front of my door trying to get my attention, or try to open my door, sometimes just come in my office. So put a piece of paper over that window. Put a sign on your door that's big enough for everyone to see that says, I'm busy, come back later, sign up to see me, but eliminate any distractions that you might have. Seek to really understand what the person is saying. Like they may be telling you a story about something, but the meaning, the real reason they're upset is about something else. So for example, my son has been begging me to play a video game that I refuse to let him play. And I have told him a million times, you will never be able to play this video game in my house. When you're 18 and you move out, you can play it then. And he's trying to communicate it to me over and over again how much he wants to play the video game. But what he's really telling me is, Mom, my friends are playing this video game and I feel left out. That might not be the words that he's saying, but that is why it's so hard for him. So seeking to really understand what he's saying is then you can address the real issue. Ask follow-up questions. Okay, so when Susie did that, then what did Tommy do? You can even initiate a basic investigation to get some details. Hopefully you have a reporting form of some sort. If the student is too upset, you can write it down for them if they have read it and sign it. And always, always clarify what the victim said. There'll be times when I would be talking to someone and I'm thinking to myself, man, what are they talking about? This doesn't really seem like bullying. But then I realize they've left out a key part. And I'm like, oh, wait, let me make sure I understand. And you clarify what they said because they also are all over the place. So empathy. This is so important. I have a great video that's already online. It's Brene Brown's empathy video that I wanted to show, but you can watch it online. I'll link it in our archive section. Empathy is the act of putting yourself in someone else's shoes and imagining how they would feel. Kids don't necessarily want you to fix it right away, especially as their counselor. That's really the administrator's or teacher's job. What they want you to do is empathize with them. So an example of this in Brene Brown's video, which is so good, is if you have a kid who's just kind of, imagine them in kind of like a big pit, like a cave almost underneath the ground, and there's a ladder. You could either crawl down in the pit with them and say things to them like, man, I don't know what to say, but I'm just really glad you told me. Or you could stand up at the top and look down through the hole at the top and say, so maybe you want a sandwich, something unrelated. Empathy is really crawling into that pit with a child and understanding how they're feeling. It's very important. There's the video, so I encourage you to go to our website and watch it. So believe and validate is so, so important to believe the kid. And even if you're not sure what they're telling you is true, or if you're pretty sure there's a whole other side to the story, you still have to believe the victim, believe what they're telling you. Validate their feelings with empathetic words like, man, I understand why you're so upset. I'd be upset too if I were in your shoes. One phrase that I use over and over again, especially when I get a call from an angry parent, is, I am so sorry this is happening. Even if there's really nothing that I can do to help that parent in the situation, listening to them, empathizing with them, and then validating that what is happening is not right is going to take the edge off, and they're going to hopefully soften them where they can listen to what you need to tell them. Also, it's really, really important that you say, this is not your fault. And sometimes, even when we say that, we're not 100% convinced that that's true. We might have a kid who has poked and poked and poked and poked and poked, and then they get punched, right? Well, if they hadn't poked him 100 times, then maybe it wouldn't be so hard for you to believe that that punch maybe wasn't a little bit deserving, but it's never deserving. Regardless of what they did, regardless of all the poking, they still did not deserve to be punched, right? So we have to validate that. And even if you're not 100% convinced, it's okay to say, this is really not your fault. So protect that victim immediately from further trauma. I would have the student come with you to your office immediately when that happens and find a safe place for them. But eventually, we want the student to be able to go back into their classroom and feel safe in their classroom. So we don't want them to change schools. We don't want to switch them out of a classroom. We need to figure out a way to make them safe inside the classroom where they already were, in the hallways where they were, on the playground, in the cafeteria, in the gym. They need to feel safe where they're supposed to be already. I have this really great video called It's Not About the Nail. It's pretty funny if you want to look it up, and I'll also link it to our website. Most importantly, tell someone else that this is going on, whether it's your administrator, so at least you've told them this is happening. Maybe it's the parent that you call home and say, hey, you know, Michelle came in and talked to me about feeling bullied today, and I want you to know that we're looking into it, but I thought it was important that you would follow up with her at home. Call that parent. I think it's really important. One thing that I don't think you should do, several things actually, actions to avoid. Don't doubt that person's personal truth. The way they see the world, the way they perceive it is truth to them. And so even if you know that it's, you know, not exactly the way they see it, that's how they see it, and it's their personal truth. Please don't ever defend the accused. One of my nightmare situations last year when I was an advocate was at a school advocating for a student, and a counselor was there, and this child had been really seriously bullied by this group of students. And the counselor looked at my victim and said, you know, those other kids, I'm sure they didn't mean much by it. I mean, they're just such good kids. So how does that make my student feel, my victim feel? Like, it totally does not validate their feelings. It says that those kids are good kids and that they shouldn't really be so upset, right? Please don't ever defend the accused. There's really no excuse for bullying. I had another parent tell me recently on a phone call, they said, you know, the school keeps saying, well, you don't know, this other student has a hard home life. Well, that might be true, and that is something for school officials to always consider, but that parent doesn't care. That kid doesn't care about this other person's home life if they're bullying them. Don't minimize the victim's feelings. Don't tell them, oh, you know what, when you're 25, you're not even going to remember this. When you're an adult, you're not even going to remember this. They probably will, actually. I know that I still remember things that happened to me when I was in elementary school. But don't minimize how they feel. What they feel is real and big. And here's an example of that. My favorite story is when I was a counselor, I had a group of friends who were in this huge fight with each other, and they were saying nasty things to each other, really could have been considered bullying. And I had them in a room together, and guess what they were angry with each other about? They couldn't decide who was the best One Direction fan, One Direction the band. They were in this huge fight about it. And really, in my head, I wanted to roll my eyes and walk away and spend my time doing something else more valuable. But to them, it was their whole world. They had deep feelings about the situation, and it was so important to help them work that out. Don't blow it off as something you can do tomorrow or something that's not important. Don't blame the victim. Well, if you wouldn't have done this, then this wouldn't happen to you. This is a big one that you're going to go, what, when I say it? Do not mediate the situation. I repeat, do not mediate a bullying situation. In fact, the only time I believe that you should mediate a situation is if it is an existing group of friends who have great potential to be friends again, and there's been a misunderstanding. That is when it's appropriate to mediate. If you put a victim of bullying into a mediation situation, you are re-victimizing the victim. You're putting them in an uncomfortable situation. We also know the bully is going to probably say whatever they want, you want to hear in that situation. It's probably not going to be genuine, and it's a very uncomfortable situation for the victim to be in. Please, I beg you, do not mediate a bullying situation. Do not. Again, so important that we don't do this because it re-victimizes the victim. And finally, do not compare your own situation. I could have told 100 stories to students about the days when I was bullied, the time when somebody put X-Lax on my Coke. Yes, that actually happened. Somebody poured whiteout down my coat. That actually happened too. But they don't care about what happened to me. They don't care about what happened to you. They care about what's happening to them right now. Do not compare your own situation, especially in the middle of a crisis. Now, there might be a time and a place for you to share that information with them, but it's not in the middle of a crisis. Don't share. They don't care. That's the little poem you can put on your wall. Don't share, they don't care. Here are my references, which I know you don't really care about, but it's all reference. And here again is my contact information. I'm going to give you a minute to write it down. Now is the time of the program where you get to ask questions or share information or ideas. So if you have a question right now, is a great time for you to share it. And we will address them as you get them. So go ahead and write down my contact information. Type in if you have a question, and we will answer your questions if we can.
Good, you're seeing everything pretty good.
Yep.
On your URL, we just didn't have a Y on bullying.
Oh.
So fortunately, one of our guests.
Not bullying, but bullying. Sorry.
So they should have all been.
So I'm going to copy and paste the URL for you again to type in. I misspelled it the first time. There is the URL for you to get your points. If you want to get a CEU or a professional development certificate, I also really want everyone to sign in because we want to be able to send you a course evaluation. We really want you to tell us how we did. Somebody loved the actions to avoid. Adding Y made all the difference. Of course it did. Sorry about that, everyone. Do I feel like it's the counselor's job to address the bully or the principal? What would you say, Shelly Ellis? Shelly was not only a counselor, but she was a principal. And so I'm going to let her jump in on that. I think she'll have a good perspective on that one.
It's going to kind of sound like a non-answer, but I really think it depends on the situation. A lot of times in a bullying situation, for sure, I would want my counselors to interview the victim, because a lot of times, just by virtue of being in the principal's office, kids have a different vibe or mentality just because of the title. So I really think it depends on the situation. If it's a repeat offender, then definitely the principal needs to be involved. And I really like the partnership between a principal and a counselor. So let's say you get into a situation where someone has been bullied and you have the perpetrator, for lack of a better word, the bullier in your office. I think for sure share that information with the principal immediately. And if they've done something like that, I mean, you can always follow up with, I'm really glad that we were able to talk about this and have some strategies for you to make better choices in the future, but I do need to share this information with the principal, and I don't know what will happen from his office, from my office. I'm helping you make better choices, have better strategies. So I really think it's kind of dependent on the situation.
I know one thing that I would always do if I felt like it was an isolated event, I would always try to talk to the bully and say something like, hey, do you have anything about yourself that you can't change that someone has teased you about? So it might be they have red hair, or it might be they have big feet, or that their ears stick out, or that they don't have the right clothes, whatever it is. Almost everyone can relate to that. Almost everyone has felt teased or put down or bullied based on something about themselves they can't change. So that is a way to really help them be empathetic and put themselves in somebody else's shoes. So that's something you can absolutely consider. The PowerPoint presentation, the slides will be online in a printout, but the PowerPoint presentation is not really, you're not really able to access it over email because it's so big. So if you're interested in this presentation, will you email me and we can work something out?
For those who joined in, just make sure they have the tiny URL and they can sign in that way, and that way we know who attended. For those that didn't sign up but are listening with you in your office.
And I'm so excited to see a teacher was here. Yay, teachers! We're so glad you're coming into listening to things like this. I think it'll be really helpful not only for you as a teacher, but it'll be great for the counselor when they work with you. So what other questions do you have for us about this situation? Sometimes a principal asks me to assess a situation to see if it is bullying, since students may call something bullying that fits a different category. I think that's okay. And based on I think again it goes back to printing off your bullying policy for your district and seeing what your policy says. And so that is how you decide whether it's bullying or not. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say my counselor, where I was principal last year, bullying is a great guidance lesson that you can go in and do. And really, it's helpful if you can explain what bullying actually is, what the definition is, what that looks like, kind of like Michelle just did with you guys. It's important for students to have the information too. So I always think that's a great guidance lesson. And especially to have that common terminology across the whole school with your principal, with your counselors, with teachers, and with the kids, so everybody understands exactly what it means. It's also important for parents to have that information.
Yeah, but here's the other thing I want to say about bullying. If a student thinks it's bullying and they perceive it that way, you have to treat it that way. Now, when you talk to them, they might throw out the word bullying and you say, well, you know, maybe this is a disagreement or something. You might have that conversation. But if a student really perceives it to be bullying, then it is. And you've got to treat it that way. Any other questions? Could you put your information back up? Sure. I'd be glad to. Here's my information. And if you need to contact me or email me about anything, I really want you to. I've had lots of great questions. And here's the thing about our office. Shelley and I both believe that we are a service agency and that we're here to serve you. So we really want you to ask us questions when you need help and let us do research for you on something. I had a great question today from a counselor who wanted resources for a family who had a student who was LGBTQ and didn't know where to go. So I was able to help them with figuring out some resources for them. So don't be afraid to ask for anything.
Let's put up our website too,
Oh, okay.
or at least so that they know where to sign up for the webinars. I mean, not for the webinars, but for the crisis training.
Okay.
A lot of people have asked that.
That's a great, let me go to our website real quick. That's a great idea. Oh, that's a great question. How do you address bullying in a middle school when bullying is such a part of the culture? You are so right about that. You know, I think it's what Shelley said about guidance lessons, starting there, and then creating kindness. I know you change the culture of your school about when you talk about kindness. I did a lesson with kids about empathy. And my personal belief is if we could teach everybody empathy, then the whole world would be a better place. And so I am going to do a webinar in the spring on empathy. And I do want you to know that we do have our date set for our spring webinars. So here I am at our website. If you will go to counseling, and if you'll scroll down, you can see that we have a new training for counselors page. Pretty excited about this. So you can go and sign up for all the webinars here. All of our archived presentations. This presentation will be archived here too, but it'll be next week before that happens. Here is our training information for those crisis team trainings that you guys were asking about. The new two have not been added to our website yet because we're still firming up a couple of dates. We'll be at the OSCA conference next week. We hope we see some of you there. Here's information about our webinars and our new dates. We'll have one in January, one in February, one in March. We're giving you April off because we know you'll be a little bit busy during that time. And then we'll have 2 in May. So, and then here down at the bottom, we have all of our archived presentations and our handouts. And then finally, down here, we have our crisis kit that we have in a couple other places too, but I wanted to be sure you saw that it was here.
That's perfect.
So I had somebody say, when I assess, I never say to a student, it really isn't bullying. I treat it as if it is, but just share with the principal my opinion of the situation. I think that's a perfect response as a counselor. I had another question. Do you feel it's the counselor's job to address the bully or the principal? I think the answer is it depends on the situation. Like Shelley said, if it's a repeat offender, then let the principal deal with it. But if it's a situation where you know the offender and you know you're surprised by the behavior, then I think it's okay for a counselor to talk to them about empathy. If you feel uncomfortable ever, then it's your right to say, principal, I feel uncomfortable with this. I think this is something that you should do.
I think the other point is, as the counselor, you never assign a consequence to it. So if you're in a situation where you're visiting with someone who has participated in a bullying situation, you are just listening, gathering information, giving them tools to do something better, but you never give the consequence. That definitely needs to move into the principal's office. So if there's a consequence involved, it's definitely going to be the principal.
Mm-hmm. Or even remediation, it should be. But part of that remediation might be time with you, talking about it. So if you didn't get your points, if you don't get your points for some reason, you can email me at my email address. My email address is all over this website too. So you can always email me and I can send them to you. That's no problem. Do you all have any other questions? Any other questions? Well, we are super, super excited that you all came and spent your lunch with us today or an hour with us. I know that your time is super precious. I know that it's a time that you could have been doing other things, and I really appreciate you spending time with us. I do have a thought from Elizabeth. If a counselor has a rapport with a bully, then the counselor can approach the bully, right? Yes, I think that that is appropriate if that's something that you feel like you want to do. Absolutely. Anybody else have any other thoughts, concerns, questions, ideas? We are really happy that you came today. Hopefully this was a great lesson for you all, and this will be archived online. You'll be able to watch the whole thing again. Again, we also will have the printout, the handouts for the slides online where you can print them off and use them. Even if you want to build your own training for your staff, you can use that. So again, thank you so much. We are finished with our webinars for the fall, but we are excited about what's coming up in the spring, our crisis team training, and also our future webinars, and you might even see some extra webinars. So thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great Thursday.